Welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. And today, Stephen and I asked the question, is the apocalypse coming? And subtitle, Untangling Catastrophic Thinking. So what do we mean by this, and what prompted this? So, as always happens with these podcasts, there's a number of factors that kind of coalesce and bring us to what we're talking about today. So Stephen was just dealing with a typhoon in Japan, and he's okay though, all is well. And I've been dealing with a health issue, resolving a health issue, and then we've been working with groups and listening to people talking about how they're thinking about themselves and the world. And of course, we're, especially since the time of COVID, we're all, I think, hyper alert to what's happening in the world and are we safe? And then all the weather events all around the planet. And then this very divisive political climate, which catastrophizes everything. So one side throws that catastrophe on the other and vice versa. And so we live in this cultural milieu of catastrophic thinking, of overly dramatizing events. Not that important things aren't happening or that we shouldn't address them. Not that, but the way we're thinking about them. And so Stephen and I are reading this book, The Wakeful Body by Willa Blythe Baker. And we're in this chapter on untangling. And in there, she talks about something that we frequently talk about, is that everything we experience is an appearance in our consciousness. It's an appearance in our consciousness. It's the result of the way we are looking at what's happening. And secondly, it's a result of how we are relating to what appears. So are we afraid of it? Are we pushing it away? Are we grasping onto it? Are we relating from fear? So it's these two factors of how are we looking at things? What are we focusing on that makes them appear a certain way to us? And then how do we relate to that, to what appears to us? So it first can be very helpful to realize that what appears in our consciousness is not necessarily what's happening, but it's arising in our consciousness because of the way we are focusing on things, the way we are relating to them. So when we start to see that, it opens the possibility of, well, maybe we could relate to them in a different way. And that's easy to say, but sometimes it can be very difficult to do. And one of the reasons is that when we are younger, things happen to us that are kind of overwhelm us, and we can create a tension around that tends to, when we see similar overwhelming things in our lives, to project that fear we had when we were younger and not able to handle things onto our adult selves and what's happening now. So let me just give a quick example from my own childhood. And one really formative event for me is when my dad sat me down and told me that my mom and dad were getting separated and divorced. And that younger Kevin, that I felt like my world was collapsing. Like I thought everything was going to fall apart. And I was completely overwhelmed by it at that moment. And I can vividly recall what that felt like. And I can also relate that to when, say, things like COVID started. I can feel that younger part of me being like, oh, is everything going to fall apart? Or dealing with a health issue. Is everything going to be okay? I can feel that younger part. And what I've learned to do over the years of meditation and practice, now over 40 years of practice, is to surround that younger part with qualities that enable that part to relax and to open up and to share those younger feelings, and then to come to a clearer seeing of current events and being able to approach them with clarity and with compassion and with skillfulness. So it reminds me of, I was listening to Richard Schwartz, who was the founder of Internal Family Systems, and he was talking about the 8 C's of our natural consciousness, our higher self, our pure awareness. And IFS names these 8 C's this way. So calm, curiosity, courage, confidence, compassion, connectedness, clarity, and creativity. So, Stephen, I thought we might talk about today what helps us to really connect with those qualities. How is it that we come to rest in those qualities so we can bring those qualities to those parts of us that might be getting afraid and might be catastrophizing, tongue twister, when things appear to us in a certain way and we react in fear and think dramatically about them rather than with clarity and skillfulness and compassion. So, Stephen, I welcome you on here.
Kevin, thank you. And love and blessings to everybody as you're listening. And I do hope you're having a beautiful day, no matter what is occurring right now in your environment or in your life. Kevin, as you were speaking, it actually brought to mind a little episode that happened last night. That speaks to this, compassion and connection and curiosity. And that is, my wife and daughter and I were in the midst of the typhoon. So you're right, we had a very big typhoon. In fact, it was there was an evacuation order placed in our area, and our house is built up in a special way, so it's generally not in danger of floods. But there were a lot of areas around our house that were flooded. Cars flooded. Shopping areas flooded, and so on. And even Hong Kong is going through the same thing right now. I've got some friends in Hong Kong who were ringing me while I was in the middle of the typhoon, and it really was a cracking, thunderous, very elemental typhoon. And they were ringing saying that parts of Hong Kong were very flooded. So my daughter and my wife were talking about this, and my daughter was asking me what to do when what would happen if our house got flooded. So first of all, I showed her, we went out for a walk around the house and we looked at the foundations and we looked at the garden, and she noted that all in our area, where our place is built is quite substantially higher than just about all the other houses except for one other. And so she realized, okay, there's a certain foundation that we'd built. So first is this foundation of, compassion and curiosity and connectedness and confidence and so on. How do we build that? And then we went inside and we were watching a program that's on Netflix called One Piece. And my daughter and my wife, it's actually a Japanese comic, and it holds the Guinness Book of World Records for the most number of copies sold. It's sold 400 million. And the author is incredibly famous in Japan, and it's about a pirate, and a very young pirate who basically is a pirate who does good. He's basically a very compassionate pirate. Anywhere he goes, if there's a village that's been has been damaged by other pirates, he will do his best to bring peace. And it's very beautiful in that sense. We cry quite a bit watching it, because this is the live version of it, if you're thinking of watching it. And the essential essence of it is that Luffy, he's the main pirate. He has a number of friends like Zoro and Nami, and whenever his friends are in danger, or even whenever another pirate dares to try and attack his crew for doing good, he always says, you know, I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and you won't hurt my friends ever. In other words, the spirit of friendship is incredibly strong, and it really is very moving. So we were talking about this, about how we felt deeply moved by this friendship. And so we went to bed, and I was staying up late because I was doing a retreat with Mingyur Rinpoche, and I always play the retreat so that my wife and daughter can hear what Mingyur Rinpoche is saying. And the thing that he was talking about was, he's a great fan of Tilopa and Naropa, Tilopa was a yogi of ancient India, and his disciple Naropa, they were present to very, very pithy teachings, like very direct teachings. And one of them that Mingyur Rinpoche happened to be talking about last night is about something you've mentioned before, Kevin, or abasa, or what appears. And he quoted Tilopa, who told Naropa, the mind is not bound by appearances. And both my wife and my daughter heard this statement, and it's quite a radical statement. The mind is not bound by appearances. And they heard this, and they asked me last night what that means. And I was talking to them, first of all, about One Piece, just in simple terms. So if you're wondering, what does that mean, that the mind is not bound by appearances? I gave them the simple example of One Piece, the movie, because we'd just been watching, or the TV series. And I said that we quite often think, when we're watching a movie, for example, that the movie's out there. But I asked my daughter what she thought about One Piece, and then my wife. And of course, they both gave different perspectives. The way that they saw it, or heard it, or felt it was actually fundamentally different. And so I said, that is abasa. You are actually recognizing that what you think is out there is also in here. So the nature of appearances includes everything out. We quite often think it's just out there, but it's actually also in here. So it's not only what they saw and heard and felt, but it also included their memories of it, and their emotions around it, and even their beliefs around it. They have subtly different beliefs around friendship, for example. Now, so everything that happens in that sense is an appearance. And when Tilopa says the mind is not bound by appearances, or not bound by abasa, actually what he's saying is we're not bound by anything that happens to us, or by anyone. So quite often what happens, and I strike this with all my clients, is that I'll ask them to share with me what's present. And they will tell me about unhappiness and all the things that contribute to unhappiness: health issues, financial problems, family arguments, divorces, spiritual challenges, not knowing their life purpose. That is not the root of the problem. That's what we think is the root of the problem, because we're still caught in appearances. Actually, the root is the grasping or the grabbing, the energy of that is trying to find fulfillment in some way, is trying to get healthy into the future, is trying to get more money, is trying to have a better relationship, is trying to become enlightened. That grasping is actually what we kind of get obsessed with. And that grasping is not the same as attachment. A lot of people, when they come to me, they think, oh, I'm attached to this, that's terrible, or I'm averse to this, that's terrible. Actually, those qualities are extremely human. There's an instinctive part of us that responds naturally to all of our environment. And you don't want to shut that down, because that actually comes in quite handy in typhoons and other dramatic plays of our life. Those are part of what makes us human. What Tilopa really meant is that grasping is that extra layer of energy. It is that subtle body energy. It is like a hidden arrow in our quiver. It's the part of us that we want to grab on, we want to get fulfilled. We want to. It's that energy, and it's in everything that's out there, and it's also in everything that's in here. So what happens, and this is where, a lot of the lamas that I've studied with, they always talk about that famous statement, this is a dream. And what it really means is that without actually seeing it for what it is, all those appearances that arise, we just unconsciously grasp onto them, and we believe them, and we add that extra energy of neediness that sort of plunges us into a desire for that in the future without us really realizing it. So we're never really present. So that the appearances, once we start to recognize them, are actually, just as you were talking about within internal family systems, actually the play of our consciousness. They are actually the light of our awareness, all of them. And once we only really start to, so you mentioned, how can we start to open up to the compassion? And so the first step is really to begin to slow down and be still and start to watch. So I'll do a really simple practice with you, because the key is to actually pause. Quite often we're rushing. I get many clients who come to me and I say, so how is it? And I've seen them, a couple of weeks ago. And they say, oh, yeah, no, there's this and that. And they'll tell me exactly the same story behind all the appearances. And then I say, have you done the practice? And they'll say, no, I was too busy. And that's exactly what happens, is we don't slow down and we don't actually sit still. Now, Kevin and I, over many years, have had a practice of sitting still. And the practice of sitting still is to help us see exactly what's arising, to actually help us to be with them. And that was exactly what Mingyur Rinpoche, or as my daughter calls him, Min Min, she calls Tenzin Mingyur Rinpoche Ten. So she's grown up with them, actually. I've been playing those all those retreats and all those guidances for many, many years. So she's quite, I think she's in a very beautiful place with that. So when we first start to slow down, so if you're listening and you're just slowing down a little bit, you just decide to stop. If you're driving, pull over, right? It's that kind of thing. You actually want to make a definite stop. Sometimes you have to say to people, stop, just stop, stop, be still for a moment. And at first you're going to feel like all the appearances that we are so accustomed to seem to be coming at us from outside, right? And that's quite natural. It's gonna seem that things are happening, typhoons are happening, world events are happening, friends are happening, visits are happening, shopping is happening, this is happening, the gym is happening, right? It seems to be all happening outside us. And then we start to recognize that other things are also coming from the inside, our thoughts, our feelings. And we're distracted at first because we're just not used to actually being still and watching. So this is a really fundamental skill to stop, sit still, and watch what's present. So I always love the example of, imagine that you're just born right now, that this is the very first moment of your life, and you're totally fresh, you've forgotten everything. I do this practice quite often. And you've forgotten everything that you used to know. So you've forgotten how to put things into categories and labels and name them and significance. Significances we hold on to, even forgotten your language. So how to put words together. So just sit still. Just that. So this is the first step into what the integrated family system or internal family systems was speaking about, that we just actually stop and sit still for a few moments. And in this freshness of just being born, watch what's happening without any effort whatsoever. Just notice, first of all, the breath. Your breath is breathing. Just actually notice it. There's an inhalation. You might notice the quality of it, and there's an exhalation. That's all. It's just a simple breath that's breathing. Then you might feel into your heart and the blood. So I can feel my blood and the heart beating. So that's all. The heart's beating. It's this simple. And then notice your skin. Right, my skin tingles. So your skin is tingling. It's sensitive. It's alive. Just notice what thoughts are happening. Thoughts are thinking, right? Regardless, they're just thinking. It's okay. Whatever thoughts you're thinking, it doesn't matter. They're just there. And we're just watching. We're just present with thoughts thinking. And then sounds. So there's sounds in my room. They're just happening. That's all. And there's light. Bring awareness to light. There's light radiating. Because you've stopped, you might notice your subtle body. Mine hums. It actually is an energy hum. And when you're still like this, the entire world just unfolds spontaneously and effortlessly, right? A bit like a magical display. And you start to cultivate quite naturally curiosity, connectedness to everything, confidence in what arises. Just because it is. Nothing you need to do to it. You don't need to change it. Just see if you can rest in this state of pure wonder, just as it is, like a child just born, or a baby just born. Can you simply witness what's present? everything, with no agenda, no names, no fear, no need to change a single thing. Everything's just unfolding. What is? Springs out of nowhere with no effort on your part. There's no words, no ideas, no concepts. It's simply indescribable. This miraculous unfurling of color and sound, of smell. Just happening. At a certain point, you realize what you're really witnessing in this unfurling of color and sound and smell is actually the expression of your mind's inherent energy in your subtle body. You're actually experiencing that unfolding. Right? Because it's all your perception, it's all your senses, your sight, hearing. This is what is leading you into this fresh state of wonder. Where the confidence in what is arises, and the connectedness with what is arises. And even though the display, the outward or even the inner appearances may change, this bright, luminous energy behind it in the background is always present, is always constant, flowing. When you recognize the magnificence of this energy, this power, it's a constant and natural flow. Gives you great confidence, gives you great connectedness, helps you to let go of the grasping that things are out there or in here. This wonder or this awe takes our attention away from concepts and names and labels, and the entanglement takes us away from our endless stories. Wonder or awe is a way of seeing everything in its present moment magic. It's a gaze of deep appreciation. Maybe that's what arises, this deep appreciation, deep compassion, deep gratitude. And just like Monkey D. Luffy in One Piece, these appearances, all of them, once a trigger for grasping, once things that you kind of tried to grab onto, now become your friends. You develop a deep sense of friendship with everything that arises. And all of this, all of it, might even become your liberator, your freedom and release. So Kevin, I'm going to pass back to you, just with an incredible gratitude for always your guidance and always the great wisdom with which you share. And I think that's something I'm always present to, is that, you know, you're arising not as an appearance to me, but actually as that luminous being of my own nature, of my own wisdom. And equally, I appear like that to you. So thank you for always appearing so wisely. I think that's one of the wonderful parts of a real true friendship, is that we keep reminding ourselves that we're not our appearances, that we're actually that luminous nature itself.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for that guidance, and thank you to Willa Blythe Baker for that beautiful practice from her chapter Untangling in the Wakeful Body. And yeah, I think it's a real shift and a switch in our consciousness when we look into that which appears to be catastrophic to us, when we use that, as you said, as the portal to liberating ourselves. And because in those things that affect us the most deeply, that's where the treasure is, right? Is by going into those experiences and uncovering, whether it's a younger part of us or just uncovering a fear or something that we normally push away. Through that, if we can bring just that kindness and compassion and gentleness to ourselves, then we transform that which scared us into that which gives us confidence and gives us that deep sense of connection with ourselves and with each other. So I thank you for joining me in these conversations, these practices always. Thank you all for joining in and participating with us. And if you'd like more information on meditation and awareness practices like this, you can visit us at raisingourvibration.net. And there you'll find info on the Raising Our Vibration book and our ROV meditation app and our online courses, our communities of practice, and we welcome you to join us in practice through that link. So thank you all once again. Wonderful to be with you, Stephen, and with all of you. Until next time, love and blessings. Bye for now.